My name is Kelly Gutierrez. I'm 31 years old, and for most of the last 2.5 years, I genuinely believed I was building a future with the man I loved. Lucas and I had lived together for the past 14 months in my apartment. The lease was in my name long before he ever moved in. That detail, as I would learn, mattered more than I realized. In the beginning, things were good, simple, soft. He used to bring me coffee in the mornings, wait up for me after long shifts, send texts like, "I miss you already," 5 minutes after I left for work. He made me feel chosen, wanted. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, affection turned into expectation. Expectation into entitlement. And entitlement into something darker, something quiet and sharp-edged that I kept trying to ignore. 8 months ago, Lucas quit his job. No discussion, no warning. One afternoon, he just walked through the door with this bright, reckless smile and said, "Babe, I'm finally doing it. I'm going all in on filmmaking. This is my passion. This is who I'm meant to be." I thought he had a plan, a portfolio, a client, something. He had nothing. No income, no schedule, not even motivation, really. In 8 months, he touched his camera maybe twice. Meanwhile, I covered everything: rent, utilities, groceries, car payments, even his phone bill. The deal was 3 months. Temporary support. But like most temporary disasters, the deadline came and went, swallowed by excuses and defensiveness. Whenever I asked gently if he'd applied for jobs, he'd stiffen and snap. "Why are you pressuring me?" "You don't respect my dreams." Respect, that was the word he loved to weaponize. By the time Tuesday rolled around, things had been tense for months. Not explosive, just a slow erosion of the parts of me that used to feel seen. Traffic was brutal. My workday had been 10 hours of putting out fires, and all I wanted was dinner and silence. Instead, I opened my front door to the sound of tearing tissue paper, and Lucas sitting on the couch, surrounded by glossy shopping bags, the expensive kind, designer logos everywhere. Some I recognized from ads targeted at women with far more disposable income than I had. He lifted a camera stabilizer, one of those premium influencer tier rigs, and grinned like a kid. "Kelly, look. This is going to take my film work to the next level." It was the kind of equipment that cost more than half my rent. My voice was very careful when I asked, "How much was it?" He waved me off. "It was on sale. Relax." "How much?" He rolled his eyes, this slow, dismissive gesture that had become second nature to him. Like $450. But it was originally $700, so technically I saved us money. Us. That word snapped something in me. Not anger, not exactly. Just exhaustion. A kind of bone-deep weariness from carrying a man who refused to lift anything but his own ego. "You spent $450, I said slowly, "when you haven't contributed to rent in 8 months, when you're supposedly broke and job hunting." He scoffed. "I am job hunting, and I contribute in other ways. I clean. I cook. I do all the emotional labor. You ordered delivery 3 times this week on my card. The dishes have been in the sink for 4 days. And emotional labor." "You mean the nightly hour where I listen to you rant about your mother?" His expression shifted from irritation to something sharper, something calculating. He stood moved close enough that I smelled the wine on his breath. "You know what your problem is?" His finger hovered inches from my face. "You're controlling. You're selfish. You don't appreciate everything I've sacrificed for us." I blinked. "Sacrificed, Lucas? You quit your job without telling me." "For us, so I could pursue something real, something meaningful. And who's paying for this meaningful life?" He laughed, cold and humorless. "Look at you, acting like you're so righteous, so smart. You think you have everything figured out." I think I said quietly, "I'm tired." That was when it happened, the shift, the snap. His face rearranged into a mask I had never seen before. "Keep pushing me," he said, voice turning icy, deliberate, controlled. "Keep pushing me, and you'll regret what happens next." A chill swept over my skin. This wasn't anger. This wasn't heat-of-the-moment bluster. This was a threat. "Is that supposed to scare me?" I asked. "It's a promise," he whispered. "You have no idea what I'm capable of. One phone call, Kelly. One. And your whole life goes down. Your job, your reputation gone. I have evidence. Of things. Things your company wouldn't be happy to hear." "Evidence of what?" "Try me," he said. "Call my bluff." I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I'd loved, lived with, fed, supported. And for the first time, I saw the truth. Lucas wasn't losing control. He'd simply stopped hiding who he really was. "Okay," I said softly. His eyebrows knit. "Okay, what?" "I'm calling your bluff. We're done. Pack your things." Shock, rage, calculating malice. His emotions spun like a wheel with no brakes. "You can't make me leave," he snapped. "I live here." "No, you don't. You're not on the lease. You don't get mail here. You told me yourself you kept your parents' address for security. Legally, you're a guest, and your time is up." "You'll regret this," he hissed. "You think you can just walk away? I'll ruin you." I grabbed a bag, laptop, charger, clothes, and headed for the door. He followed, voice cracking between sobs and fury. "You'll beg me to come back. You'll crawl." Maybe I said, but I doubt it. My hand closed around the doorknob. "I think," I added quietly, "you just showed me exactly who you are. And honestly, thank you. You saved me from wasting more time." Then I walked out. My hands were shaking as I drove to my friend's place. Adrenaline buzzed under my skin, but beneath it, something lighter. Something like relief. When my friend opened the door and asked, "Are you okay?" I realized the strange truth. I think I said, exhaling for what felt like the first time in months that I actually am. I stayed at my friend Daria's place for 4 days. She insisted I take the guest room, even though I kept telling her I didn't want to intrude. But she knew before I even said anything that I wasn't safe going home while Lucas was still in the apartment. The first night I turned my phone on, silent. By morning, I had 27 missed calls and 14 voicemails. By the end of the second day, it was over 50. I refused to listen. I didn't want his voice in my head anymore, not until I felt steady enough to face whatever he'd said. On Sunday evening, after giving him more than enough time to pack and leave, I finally drove back to my apartment. The parking lot was quiet. Lucas's car wasn't there. For one brief, sweet second, I believed maybe he'd taken the high road. But when I unlocked the door, my stomach fell through the floor. The air hit me first, a sour mix of wine trash and something rotten. Then the silence. A kind of silence that only exists in places violence has already passed through. I stepped inside and felt the crunch under my shoes. My living room looked like someone had set off an emotional bomb. Couch cushions ripped open, stuffing everywhere. My coffee table flipped, one leg snapped clean off. Every dish in my kitchen smashed and scattered in a mosaic of broken edges. Yogurt pasta sauce, salad dressing, everything from the fridge smeared and splattered across the floor as if he'd thrown them like paint. But the worst part was my TV. A heavy object had been hurled through the screen with enough force to shatter it into a spiderweb of cracks, black edges bleeding toward the center. I still held the doorknob, fingers numb, as if some part of me refused to step fully into the destruction. Then I forced myself forward because I had to document everything. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and narrated with the same calm tone I used at work, the tone I used when I had no choice but to keep it together. This is Sunday, 6:47 p.m. I'm entering my apartment for the first time since Tuesday night. I gave my ex-boyfriend Lucas Reynolds until today to pack and leave. My voice shook on his name. I walked slowly through the living room. As you can see, the couch cushions have been cut open. The coffee table is broken. The television screen is shattered. Each step made the food-covered glass crack louder beneath me. The bedroom made my breath catch. Red wine was everywhere, splashed across the walls, soaked into the carpet, poured in thick, bleeding waves across my bed. Clothes from my closet had been yanked out, flung everywhere, several cuts straight through with scissors. My makeup bag was dumped in the toilet, but the bathroom mirror stopped me cold. Written in red lipstick. My red lipstick were the words, "You did this. Not we, not I, not even Kelly." Just a message meant to blame, taunt, confuse. I swallowed hard and kept recording. The primary bedroom has been vandalized extensively. Wine damage, property destruction, defacement. My own voice sounded distant, like someone else was narrating a documentary about a life that wasn't mine. I turned off the camera only when I reached the doorway again. I didn't sit down, couldn't. The whole apartment felt contaminated by him. I called the non-emergency police line with fingers that barely obeyed me. When the officer arrived, an older man, weary in the way people become after seeing too much, he took in the destruction with a quiet exhale. "Ex-boyfriend?" he asked. "Yes. Break up when?" "Tuesday night. I've been staying with a friend. I haven't been here since." He nodded as he took photos. "He make any threats?" I hesitated. "He said he could ruin my life, that he had evidence. That one phone call would destroy my reputation." "Any of that in writing?" "No, but he left voicemails." His eyebrows lifted. "Voicemails? Yes, some of them. I think you need to hear." I played 3. The calm ones. The chilling ones. The one where he said, "Don't make me do this, Kelly. I'll tell people what you did, what you're really like. They'll believe me." The officer paused, the playback, jaw tightening. I'm going to put in my report that you've expressed concern about potential false accusations. That voicemail alone is significant. He looked at my broken TV, the slash closed the mirror. You should consider a protective order. I'm planning on it, I murmured. He gave me the case number, advised me to change my locks immediately, and stepped back out into the hallway. Only when the door closed behind him did my body crumble into motion. I called an emergency locksmith. He quoted me $280 for Sunday night service. I agreed instantly. While waiting, I sat on the bare patch of floor untouched by debris and finally opened my voicemail app. The list was long. I braced myself and hit play. Friday, 8:54 a.m. Crying, frantic. Kelly, please. Baby, please talk to me. I didn't mean what I said. I love you. Please don't do this. Friday, 3:13 p.m. Cold, sharp. Oh, so this is how it is. You ignore me after everything I did for you. Real mature, Kelly. You're going to pay for this. You hear me? You will. Saturday, 4:18 a.m. Unhinged. I know what you did at that company retreat last year. Don't pretend you don't remember. I have ways of making people see the truth about you. I froze. I didn't do anything. I'd never even seen him at any retreat. Saturday, 10:27 a.m. Manipulative rage. My dad is a lawyer. He says you illegally evicted me. You're going to jail. You think you can just throw me out after everything I gave up for you. And then the one that made my blood run cold. Saturday, 6:41 p.m. Venom dripping from every word I'll tell everyone you hit me. Let's see how your precious job feels about hiring an abusive woman. One phone call, Kelly. 1. You think I won't do it? Try me. My breath came shallow and fast. I saved every voicemail, backed them up, emailed copies to myself, texted them to Daria with timestamps. Then I called her. When she picked up, I didn't even say hello. He's going to try to destroy my life, I whispered. There was a pause, then her voice turned firm, anchored solid. Then we're going to make damn sure he fails. The locksmith finished just before 10 p.m., replacing every lock and resetting the garage code. When he left, the apartment finally felt closed off from Lucas, not safe exactly, but sealed, like the chaos couldn't seep in anymore, at least not physically. But I still couldn't stay there. I grabbed whatever clothes hadn't been slashed or soaked in wine, threw them into a duffel, locked up, and drove straight back to Daria's. She opened the door the moment I parked, as if she'd been standing on the other side, waiting for the sound of my engine. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. Wine, she offered quietly. Yes, I said, even though my throat felt too tight to swallow anything. We sat at her dining table, and I finally forced myself to play some of the voicemails. The crying ones, the angry ones, the dangerous ones. By the end, Daria's hands were clenched around her glass knuckles, white eyes burning with protective fury. Kelly, she said, you need a lawyer. Immediately. Before he makes good on any of these threats. I know, my voice barely held. He said he'd accuse me of... Don't say it, she cut in gently. Just get legal help. So I did. The next morning, I called into work and met with an attorney named Serena Cho. She was calm, razor sharp, the kind of woman who radiated competence without trying. I handed her everything, photos of the destruction, my video, walked through the police report number, and finally, every voicemail. She listened to the worst one, twice the one where Lucas threatened to tell people I hit him. Then she closed her notebook and looked at me steadily. This isn't vague, she said. He threatened false allegations and then caused thousands of dollars of damage. You have an unusually strong case. Hearing that didn't make everything disappear, but it made breathing easier. Serena drafted the protective order request and a cease and desist letter. She told me what to expect next legally and emotionally, and for the first time in days, I felt like someone was standing between Lucas and me. But Lucas wasn't finished. That afternoon, before the cease and desist was even delivered, my phone rang. From an unknown number. I shouldn't have answered. Serena had already warned me, but some foolish part of me hoped he might be calm. He wasn't. How dare you send me legal papers? Lucas shouted the moment I picked up. You're trying to intimidate me after everything I sacrificed for you. I'm not supposed to talk to you directly, I said flatly. Please communicate through an attorney. I don't have one, he snapped. Because you ruined my life and left me with nothing. You kicked me out like trash. That's not my responsibility anymore, I said quietly. Do not call this number again. I hung up. He called back 8 more times. I let every call go to voicemail. The next day, while I was finally catching up on work emails, I got a text from a coworker, Kelly. Lucas's mom is here. She's in the lobby yelling at reception. My whole body went cold. I rushed to my manager's office. He was standing outside, looking strained and uncomfortable. Kelly, he said, a woman came in claiming you physically abused her son. She demanded I contact HR and terminate you immediately. My heart pounded. I opened the folder I'd started carrying everywhere: photos, documentation, transcribed, voicemails, the police report, everything. He flipped through the pages. His expression changed from concern to something harder. By the time he finished, he closed the folder and nodded once. "Stay here." I heard her voice rising in the lobby, shrill and cracked with anger, insisting that her son was the victim. Security got involved. 10 minutes later, my manager returned. "She's been escorted out," he said, and warned that if she returns, the police will be called. HR is aware of the situation. Relief nearly buckled my knees. "Thank you," I whispered. I didn't know if anyone would believe me. "You've been here 8 years," he said firmly. "Your reputation matters. But not everyone would have given you the benefit of the doubt without documentation. You did the right thing keeping records." I left his office shaking. If I hadn't saved those voicemails, if I hadn't taken photos, if I hadn't recorded everything, I could have lost my job. Lucas wasn't trying to reconcile. He was trying to destroy me piece by piece. On Saturday morning, my landlord called next. "Hey, Kelly," he said hesitantly. "I got a strange call from someone claiming to be your ex's father. He said I helped you illegally evict his son and he's considering legal action." Of course he did. He was never on the lease, I said. Never paid rent. All his mail goes to his parents' house. Legally, he was a guest. That's what I figured. The landlord paused. He also said I should inspect the apartment for damages in case you caused them. A humorless laugh escaped me. Lucas destroyed over $3,000 worth of my property. I have the police report. "Send it to me," he said quickly. "If they contact me again, I'll handle it." So now it wasn't just Lucas, it was his entire family. 2 days later, Serena forwarded me a scanned letter handwritten by Lucas. 3 pages filled with accusations, demands, and emotional manipulation. He wanted $5,000 for emotional support during our relationship. He claimed the vandalism was self-defense. He insisted he had witnesses, and he threatened to press criminal charges unless I dropped my legal actions. It was unhinged. Serena's response was surgical and devastating, citing every voicemail, every piece of evidence, every factual contradiction. She warned him of the consequences of further harassment or false allegations, but he wrote back again, still refusing accountability, still doubling down, still insisting on a reality that never existed. The protective order hearing was set for the following week. 1 week until I'd have to face him again. 1 week until everything he'd done, all of the lies, all the threats, all the destruction would finally be put under the cold, bright light of a courtroom. I wasn't ready. But ready or not, it was happening. The week leading up to the hearing felt like standing on thin ice, every hour a fresh crack beneath my feet. I kept waiting for the next escalation, another phone call, another surprise at work, another attack through someone connected to him. But instead of Lucas, I heard from someone I never expected. It started with a text from an unknown number on Thursday night. "Hi, I'm sorry if this is weird. My name is Elise. I used to date Lucas." My stomach tightened. Another message followed. "I heard what's happening. I think you should know some things." Every instinct screamed to ignore it, but something about the name Elise tugged at a memory. Lucas had mentioned her once briefly in that dismissive way men talk about women they're trying to erase. Curiosity won. What things I typed. Seconds later, my phone rang. Her voice was cautious, shaken but clear. "Kelly, I'm not here to cause more problems. I recognize the pattern." She explained that 2 years before Lucas met me, he had done almost the exact same thing to her. The slow manipulation, the financial dependency, the threats when she tried to leave. She too had been told that he had evidence. She too had been threatened with false accusations. She too had been harassed afterward, but she didn't have the documentation I had. "I didn't know how bad it had gotten," Elise said quietly. "But when I heard from someone that he was saying you ruined his life, I recognized the language. I thought you should know you're not the first." The call lasted 20 minutes, but it felt like an entire chapter of the story snapping into place. When we hung up, I sat frozen on Daria's couch, the weight of everything Lucas had done settling in my bones. He hadn't just lost control. This was a pattern, a script he recycled, a tactic he perfected. And now he was turning it on me. When I told Serena about Elise the next morning, she nodded gravely. "It fits with everything we've seen." But unless Elise is willing to testify, and if the judge allows it, because prior acts aren't always admissible, our focus stays on your evidence. I understood. It was frustrating, but I understood. Still knowing I wasn't alone helped. Not because misery loves company, but because it proved I wasn't imagining any of this. The day before the hearing, Lucas sent another handwritten note this time, left in my building's mailbox. Serena said not to open it, so I didn't. She handled it directly and emailed me later. Kelly, the letter is more delusions and some threats masked as self-pity. I've attached a summary. Do not respond. I read the summary. It was pathetic and frightening all at once. Lucas claimed he was traumatized by the breakup, that he had a right to return to my apartment, that he was considering ending everything unless I apologized, that all his actions were the result of emotional distress I caused. Serena included a line in her email. This is classic manipulation. Do not engage. I didn't. I turned off my phone, laid in bed at Daria's, and stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of traffic outside. My mind kept replaying the same moments, the threats, the tantrums, the cold smile he gave me the night I ended it. I thought of how easily he'd switched masks. I thought of the lipstick on my mirror. You did this. I thought of what could have happened if I hadn't left when I did. By midnight, I hadn't slept a minute. By 4 a.m., I stopped trying. Morning arrived, heavy and gray light filtering through a thin layer of clouds that made everything feel muted. Dressed in the plainest, cleanest clothes I had left, I tied my hair back and met Serena at the courthouse. You ready? She asked. No, I said honestly, but I'm here. That's enough. She placed a hand on my shoulder. You have truth evidence and documentation. He only has emotion and performance. We walked inside. Lucas was already there. Seeing him again hit me harder than I expected. He looked smaller, somehow diminished. But the moment his eyes met mine, they hardened sharp, gleaming with vindictive pride, as if he thought I'd crumble just from seeing him. His mother was at his side, clutching his arm, whispering furiously. His father stood behind them, stiff and silent, pretending authority he didn't have. Lucas didn't approach me legally. He couldn't, but his smirk was enough. Serena leaned toward me and whispered, He's trying to intimidate you. Ignore it. Judges don't care about theatrics. We entered the courtroom. The air felt colder in there, the kind of cold that came from polished floors, fluorescent lights, and the knowledge that a stranger would soon decide whose story carried truth. The judge entered, and everyone rose. My hands trembled slightly as I sat, but Serena placed a legal pad in front of me and whispered, Just breathe. Lucas was asked to speak first. He stood, shoulders slumped just a bit enough to appear wounded, fragile, and then he began, Your Honor, I've been abandoned. I sacrificed so much for Kelly, my career, my stability, my emotional well-being, and she threw me out with no warning. I had nowhere to go. I was devastated. I wasn't thinking clearly. Everything I did was because I was hurting. He wiped at his eyes dramatically. He didn't shed a single tear. The judge listened, expression unreadable. When Lucas finished, the judge asked him a very simple question. Are you addressing the allegations of property damage and recorded threats? Lucas faltered. Well, those were misunderstandings. I was upset. She provoked. Did you destroy property in her apartment? A very long pause. His mother nudged him. Some of it, he muttered. But did you leave voicemails threatening to make false accusations of domestic abuse? I didn't mean I was emotional. The recordings suggest premeditation, the judge said calmly. Not emotion. Lucas's face drained of color. And finally, it was my turn. I stood, hands trembling, but Serena's steady presence beside me kept me upright. I spoke clearly. I described the timeline, the breakup, the threats, the vandalism, the voicemails. And then Serena played them aloud. Lucas's mask cracked. His parents went still. The judge's expression hardened. The hearing wasn't over yet. But for the first time, I felt the tide turning. The recordings echoed through the courtroom like something out of a nightmare, except it wasn't a nightmare. It was my life, my voice trembling, his voice cold and deliberate, the venom dripping from every word. When the last voicemail finished playing, a quiet settled over the room, so heavy it felt almost physical. Lucas couldn't look at me. His mother couldn't look at the judge. His father stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, so hard it twitched. The judge folded his hands. Ms. Gutierrez, thank you. You may be seated. I sat. My knees felt weak, but Serena rested her hand lightly on my forearm, an anchor in the storm. Mr. Reynolds, the judge said. Turning to Lucas, you admitted to property damage and left recorded threats. Do you contest the validity of these recordings? Lucas's voice came out thin. They're taken out of context. The judge raised one eyebrow. The context appears to be you threatening to falsely accuse Ms. Gutierrez of physical abuse because she ended the relationship. Lucas swallowed hard. I wasn't thinking clearly. That is evident, the judge said dryly. It does not excuse the behavior. His mother finally snapped, rising partially from her seat. Your Honor, my son has been through trauma. Ma'am, the judge said sharply, sit down. You may not interrupt these proceedings again. She sank back into her seat, but her glare burned holes into me. The judge turned to Serena. I've reviewed the photos, the sworn statement from the witness, and the police documentation regarding the vandalism, and the voicemails are extremely concerning. Does the petitioner have anything further? No, Your Honor, Serena replied. The evidence speaks for itself. It does, the judge agreed. He looked back at Lucas. For a long moment, he simply studied him like he was trying to decide whether Lucas was oblivious, manipulative, or dangerous. Maybe all three. Mr. Reynolds, he said at last, your behavior following this breakup constitutes harassment, intimidation, threats of false criminal accusations, and property destruction exceeding $3,000. You present a credible ongoing risk to Ms. Gutierrez's safety. Lucas flinched. His mother whispered something fierce and frantic to his father. The judge continued, tone firm and final. I am granting the protective order for 1 year. You are prohibited from contacting Ms. Gutierrez directly or indirectly, including through family or third parties. You must stay 500 feet from her residence and place of employment. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. Lucas's shoulders caved in. His mother gasped a theatrical, outraged, breathy sound. But the judge wasn't done. Additionally, he added, based on the evidence presented, particularly the respondent's own admission of damage and the documented cost exceeding the felony threshold, I am forwarding this case to the district attorney's office for review of potential felony vandalism charges. The room went still. Lucas's face drained of all color. His mouth opened, then closed again. For felony, he stammered. You can't, it was just property. Over $3,000, the judge corrected, and on video. His mother lurched to her feet again, voice cracking with rage. This is unfair. She manipulated the system. She provoked him. My son is the victim here. The bailiff stepped forward. Ma'am, you need to calm down. No, she screeched, pointing at me. She's the abuser. She ruined his life. Ma'am, the judge said sharply, leave the courtroom or you will be removed. Her father pulled her back down by the arm, hissing something under his breath. Her face was splotchy with fury. She looked like she wanted to claw her way across the room. I kept my eyes focused on the table in front of me. Not out of shame, out of discipline. This wasn't the moment to react. When the proceedings formally ended, Serena gathered our documents and whispered, You did well. Let's go. We stepped out into the hallway, but Lucas and his parents were already there. They must have rushed out first, waiting to corner me. His mother lunged forward before the bailiff could catch up. I hope you're happy, she spat. You've destroyed him. Do you understand that he has no job, no home, no money, and now maybe a felony record? You did this to him. I met her eyes calmly. No, he did this to himself. You should have been understanding, she hissed. Women lash out when they're hurt. You should have been patient. Understanding doesn't mean letting someone abuse me, I said, voice steady. If your idea of parenting is teaching your son that women should never face consequences, then maybe that's why we're here. She went silent, stunned. Lucas stared at me like he didn't recognize me, or maybe like he finally saw the version of me he could never control. His father muttered, Karma will come for you before dragging his wife away. When they were gone, Serena exhaled. They'll cool off. People like that burn hot and fast. I'm not afraid of them, I said. It was true. For the first time since the breakup, the fear wasn't the loudest thing inside me. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Unshaken. Solid. Whole. And maybe just maybe free. A month passed after the hearing, though it felt more like a year compressed into 4 long, uneven weeks. Everything slowed down in strange ways. My mornings felt quieter, my evenings felt longer, and for the first time in months, the silence around me didn't feel dangerous. It felt like mine again. 3 weeks after the protective order was granted, I got a call from Serena. Kelly, she said the district attorney decided to file charges. Felony vandalism was on the table. But due to your ex's lack of prior convictions, they're offering him a plea deal. My stomach tightened. What kind of deal? Misdemeanor property damage, 18 months probation, mandatory restitution of $1,500. If he violates the protective order during probation, the original felony charge will be reinstated. I let out a slow breath, not relief exactly, but something close. Will he accept it? I asked. He already did, she said. Probation begins next week. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was accountability, and that mattered more than I realized. Later that evening, as I sat on my repaired couch, the new one, not the shredded remains insurance hauled away, I thought about how surreal it all felt. A month ago, Lucas was still calling me nonstop, threatening me, insisting he could ruin me. Now he was legally barred from coming anywhere near me. It didn't erase the fear he caused, but it muted it, softened it around the edges. Rebuilding the apartment took time. Insurance covered some things, but between the deductible legal fees, the locksmith, and all the personal items I had to replace out of pocket, I ended up spending close to $2,800. Not nothing, Daria said one night as she helped me put together a replacement TV stand, but also not everything. She was right. Money can be earned back. Some things can't. While unpacking the last of the replacement dishes, I found myself staring at my reflection in the cabinet glass, tired but steady, not broken, not scared. Just present. My job became an unexpected source of stability, too. My manager pulled me aside after my performance review. I want you to know, he said, I'm incredibly impressed by how you navigated a personal crisis with professionalism and clarity. Most people wouldn't have handled it half as well. Hearing that nearly brought me to tears, not because of the compliment, but because for the first time in months, someone wasn't doubting me, disbelieving me, or trying to rewrite my reality. They saw me, they trusted me, they believed me. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed that feeling. Slowly, I rebuilt my social life too. The friends I'd drifted from during my relationship with Lucas reached out. Some cautiously, others boldly, all with a kind of relieved affection. One night, while sitting around a fire pit in Daria's backyard, my friend Megan said something that stuck with me. You seem lighter, Kel. Not healed, not yet, but unburdened. Like you can breathe again. She wasn't wrong. I was breathing again. But healing wasn't linear. There were moments, sometimes at night, sometimes in crowded places, when my chest tightened, when shadows felt too loud, when a phone notification made my heart race before I reminded myself, he can't reach me. Sometimes I'd replay the manipulation in my head, remembering the early moments I dismissed as quirks, the excuses I made, the way his moods dictated my own. Sometimes I'd get angry at him, at myself, at the world, for letting people like him slip through cracks and find people to latch onto. That's why I started therapy. Not because I was broken, but because being threatened with false accusations, having your home destroyed, and becoming someone's emotional hostage leaves marks you don't always see right away. My therapist told me something during our second session that hit me hard. Abuse doesn't always start with violence. Sometimes it starts with excuses. And the person making the excuses is usually you. It was like she held a mirror up to the past 2 years of my life. I forgave myself for not seeing it sooner. And I learned to understand the difference between normal conflict and emotional corrosion, the kind that eats away at who you are, one tiny compromise at a time. Dating wasn't on my mind. Not for now. Maybe not for a long time. It's okay to wait, my therapist said. It's okay to trust yourself again before trusting anyone else. So I waited. I'm still waiting. And honestly, I'm not in a rush. My life finally feels like my own again. No threats hanging over me. No man using love as leverage. No walking on eggshells in my own home. Just quiet, just peace, just me. A few nights ago, Daria and I sat on the couch eating ice cream straight from the carton when she suddenly asked, "When did you know it was really over?" I didn't even have to think. The moment he said, "Keep pushing me and you'll regret what happens next." That was the moment he told me exactly who he was. Daria nodded. And you listened. I did, I said. Finally. That threat, the one he used to try to control me, became the moment I woke up. And every escalation that followed only confirmed what I had refused to admit for months. Lucas didn't want a partner. He wanted a hostage. And the only thing I regret now is not walking away sooner. My name is Sandra Chamberlain. I'm 29 years old, and this is the story of how one quiet Tuesday evening dismantled the future I thought I was building. For 3 years, I believed I knew the man I lived with. Lucas Ward, 27. My boyfriend. The person I'd planned to marry someday, the man I thought I understood down to the smallest detail. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment about 18 months ago. Spacious, warm, filled with soft gallery light mornings, and the smell of his favorite hazelnut coffee. I paid 70% of the rent not because I lorded a higher salary over him, but because he'd insisted that it made sense. I worked in corporate finance. He worked in marketing. I don't want to hold you back, he'd said. One day it'll be 50-50, and I'd believed him because I loved believing him. I had been quietly, embarrassingly thinking about engagement for months, saving money, browsing rings online at midnight when he couldn't see the tabs open. I even asked his sister casually what kind of cut she liked, trying not to give myself away. I can't think about that now without feeling a bitter laugh crawl up my throat. It started 8 months ago. Lucas came home one evening and told me he'd reconnected with some college friends, a few women from an old Instagram sorority group chat, and they wanted to revive their Tuesday book club. The phrase sounded oddly wholesome, like something out of a coming-of-age movie. Wine, books, stories, laughter. A feminine little world I wasn't part of, but that was fine. I didn't need to orbit every inch of his life. "I'm happy for you," I remember saying, and I had meant it. He seemed excited, and I genuinely believe people needed their own spaces even within a relationship. But the first strange thing happened quickly. The meetings always lasted until 2 in the morning, sometimes later 2:30 even. Every single Tuesday, without fail. He would leave the apartment at 7, kiss me lightly on the cheek as if stepping into a routine that existed long before me, and then vanish into the night. I asked once lightly, "Isn't that a little late for a book club?" He smiled too quickly. "We really get into discussions sometimes, and whoever hosts usually lives far out. We lose track of time." I asked which friend hosted. "It rotates," he said. I asked what book they were reading. He gave me a few titles, real ones. Classics. A few popular contemporary novels. I Googled them to be sure, and they checked out. For his birthday, I bought him one of the books he claimed they were reading. He hugged me, thanked me, but I never saw him open it. Not once. He left every Tuesday wearing nicer outfits than usual. Not dressy, but intentional. A spritz of cologne he rarely wore for our dates. His hair styled in that slightly messy look that somehow took effort to achieve. If I asked, he'd say, "It's networking, babe. Appearance matters." Networking. That word would haunt me later. Still, I trusted him. 3 years together, living in the same home, having difficult conversations, sharing responsibilities, dreaming about dogs, and future homes. What reason did I have not to trust him? It turns out trust without evidence is a dangerous currency. 3 weeks ago, Lucas forgot his iPad at home. It almost never happened. He took it to work daily, always charging it on his nightstand. But that morning he left in a rush jacket, half on toast in his hand, kissing my forehead before bolting out the door. The iPad remained on the kitchen counter, quietly pulsing with notifications as I made my coffee. I wasn't even looking at it when the message preview lit up the screen. "Same place tonight. The girls are asking if we're still coming." Sent by someone saved as book club group. The girls. The words hit the side of my skull like a cold stone. The book club was, according to Lucas, mostly women, but the wording in that message didn't match the dynamic he described. It felt off wrong, too casual and conspiratorial. My stomach tightened into a hard knot. I hesitated. I truly did. I told myself I shouldn't invade his privacy. I whispered out loud, "Don't open it, Sandra." But something ancient and protective and trembling inside me said otherwise. I tapped the notification. The group chat had 7 members: Lucas, 2 women, 4 men. And not a single message was about books. Instead, I saw talk of which bar they were hitting next, who was bringing tequila shots, who was driving, who owed who a drink. Pictures of them at lounges, Edison bulbs glowing gold behind their silhouettes. Lucas grinning, with strangers pressed against him. Women leaning into him like he was theirs. His arm around one of them in a dimly lit club. Another photo, Lucas holding a shot glass cheek to cheek with a girl whose red dress matched the fire emoji someone sent underneath. "Are you wearing that red shirt again tonight?" one woman wrote. My hands trembled. My breath turned hollow. I scrolled back. Weeks and weeks of these messages. Jokes I didn't understand, winking faces inside references. Nothing explicitly sexual, but the tone wasn't innocent. It was charged, it was flirty, it was dishonest. 8 months of Tuesdays. 8 months of lies. 8 months of me believing in a book club that never existed. I didn't confront him that night. I couldn't. The truth was too sharp and too loud, and I needed silence to think. So instead, I took screenshots, every message, every photo, every emoji. I emailed them to myself. Then I closed the iPad, placed it exactly where he left it, and forced my hands to still long enough to wipe my fingerprints off the screen. When he walked in at 2:15 a.m., smelling like cocktails and cigarette smoke, he kissed my cheek. "The book we discussed tonight was so emotional," he murmured. "You'd love it." I nearly laughed. I nearly cried. But instead, I said nothing. Not yet. The next Tuesday, everything would begin collapsing. The following Tuesday, I told Lucas I'd be working late on a financial presentation for my firm. He kissed the top of my head distractedly, thanked me for being so understanding, and left in his usual Tuesday night haze of cologne and rehearsed innocence. But I wasn't going to my office. I wasn't even carrying my laptop. Inside the canvas tote bag clutched against my chest was a stainless steel thermos of fresh coffee. My small, pointed symbol of the book club he'd supposedly been attending for 8 straight months. A gesture so polite it bordered on cruel. I drove to the bar I had identified from the iPad photos, an upscale lounge with warm, amber lights, velvet seating, and that polished industrial style everyone pretends is effortless. The kind of place where drinks cost as much as a modest lunch and people go to feel interesting. When I stepped inside, a thrum of bass wrapped around me like a heartbeat gone wrong. This wasn't a place for quiet reading or literary debates. This was a shrine to nightlife, to escape indulgence and anonymity. My eyes scanned the room, and then I saw him. Lucas, back in a booth near the wall, surrounded by 2 women and 3 men I'd never seen before, all of them laughing, like they shared a secret the rest of us were too naive to understand. The women were dressed like they were auditioning for a music video. Small dresses, bold lips, glittered eyes. And Lucas, he was wearing that red shirt. The one from the fire emoji message? The one a girl had asked about in the chat. The one he had never worn for a single date with me. He looked different, comfortable, like he belonged in that little pocket of lies more than he belonged in our apartment. One of the women, a brunette with glossy hair and nails, painted the same shade as her cocktail, slid her arm along the back of the booth behind him. He didn't move away. He didn't even look uncomfortable. He liked it. My pulse hammered. My throat felt raw, even though I hadn't spoken a word. Still, I walked toward them slow, steady, clutching the coffee carrier as if it were a weapon wrapped in kindness. No one noticed me at first. The music, the laughter, the glint of ice in their glasses swallowed my footsteps whole. But when I reached their table and placed the cardboard coffee tray down among their neon cocktails, the entire group went silent. I smiled. Thought the book club might need some refreshments, I said softly. So, what chapter are you all on? The silence cracked like glass. Lucas's head whipped around and the color drained from his face so fast I heard someone mutter, "Oh, damn." His eyes widened, his mouth opened and closed like he'd forgotten how to breathe. Every lie he'd told was suddenly alive, sitting between us, exposed in the dim bar lights. Sandra. What are you doing here? His voice broke on my name. Oh, I said, tilting my head. Supporting your literary pursuits. You've been working so hard, reading so late. I just wanted to contribute. One of the men, tall, overly groomed, radiating arrogance, squinted at me. Book club. We're just hanging out, he said. Who are you? Before Lucas could stop him, I smiled politely. I'm his girlfriend. Half the table stared at Lucas. The brunette beside him withdrew her arm. Slowly, eyebrows rising in a silent seriously, Lucas scrambled to recover. Babe, this isn't what it looks like. This is networking. I told you it was networking. Right, I said. Networking. With potential clients. At a bar. Until 2 a.m. Every week. I paused. And the women asking if you're wearing the red shirt again. Definitely professional inquiries, I'm sure. His face went paper white. I don't know what you saw, but Sandra, please. He grabbed my arm lightly, desperate, trying to pull me aside. Let's talk outside. I let him lead me a few steps away, just far enough for his networking team not to hear. He kept looking over his shoulder, like he was terrified of losing whatever credibility he had left with them. The excuses came in a frantic whisper. These are colleagues. We're building connections. You're taking everything out of context. Nothing ever happened. I swear. You've been stressed and distant lately. Maybe that's why you're misinterpreting everything. You're embarrassing me. That last one stung more than the lies. I took a breath and asked quietly, if it's networking, why did someone in the chat ask if you were wearing the red shirt again? With a fire emoji, his entire face slackened. He had no answer. The group behind us watched, whispering. The music pulsed a slow, mocking rhythm. Lucas's facade, so carefully constructed over 8 months of lies, was collapsing right in front of them. I'm going home, I said. We'll talk there. He didn't follow immediately. He stayed at the booth for another 10 minutes, probably trying to salvage what was left of his pride. I'd always wondered what it would take for him to choose me over appearances. Apparently not much. Apparently nothing at all. He came home at 3 in the morning. I heard the key turn in the lock, the shuffle of his shoes, the shaky exhale of someone bracing for impact. Sandra, his voice cracked. I didn't answer. I sat on the couch in the dark waiting. When he finally found me, he sank to his knees on the rug in front of the sofa, eyes red, breath unsteady. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "Nothing physical ever happened. I swear on my mother's life. I liked the attention. I felt irrelevant lately, and you've been busy, and Sandra, please don't give up on us." His tears were real. His guilt was real, but so were his lies. He reached for my hands. I didn't move. "I need space," I said quietly. I slept in the guest room that night, staring at the ceiling in the dark, listening to him cry softly through the wall. But even then, even in that moment, I knew it. I wasn't staying, not after this. The betrayal had already carved itself into me, irreversible as a burn. I began planning my exit before the sun rose. For the first time in our 3-year relationship, Lucas and I moved around each other like we were temporary tenants, sharing a space we both wanted to escape. We only spoke when absolutely necessary, our sentences clipped and hollow, each word landing with the fragile sound of cracked porcelain. While he tried to cling to apologies and hopeful glances, I was already detaching myself piece by piece. On Wednesday afternoon, I called our landlord from my office. My voice surprised me, steady, detached, professional. "I'm looking into breaking the lease," I said. He explained the conditions: 30 days notice, and a break fee equal to 2 months of rent. $3,000. I felt the sting, but freedom isn't free, and staying would have cost me far more. That night, I quietly began removing the things I couldn't risk losing in a breakup spun by someone who already rewrote reality for convenience. Important documents, sentimental items, valuables. The pieces of my life that existed long before Lucas and would exist long after. I placed everything discreetly into tote bags, slipped out under the pretense of taking out trash, and drove straight to my friend Harper's garage. She didn't ask questions. She saw my face and simply opened the door wider. The next morning, Lucas shifted into a new version of himself. He took the day off work and made breakfast eggs Benedict, his old Impress Sandra dish from our early dating days. He overcooked the yolks, the hollandaise broke in the middle, and the whole thing drooped on the plate, but the desperation behind it was unmistakable. "I'm trying." "Sandra," he whispered, voice cracking, "please see that I'm trying." I quietly ate 2 bites. He watched me like a man waiting for a verdict that would determine the rest of his life. I didn't give him one. He followed me around the apartment that day, hovering, apologizing, offering small gestures that arrived months too late. Every "I'm sorry" sounded less like remorse and more like a plea for me to erase his wrongs for him. By day 3, the apologies began to unravel. I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed with a call I almost didn't answer. Lucas's mother. Against better judgment, I picked up. The moment I said hello, she launched into a scolding tirade. "Lucas told me you're overreacting to him having friends," she snapped. "Women need personal space. You being jealous is unhealthy and embarrassing." I stared at the wall, gripping the phone. "Ma'am, he lied to me about a book club for 8 months. She scoffed loudly. "Maybe if you weren't so controlling, he wouldn't need to hide things." I hung up on her mid-sentence. I refused to let strangers weaponize their ignorance at me. Then came the friends. Texts poured in long paragraphs, accusing me of destroying a beautiful relationship, insisting I grow up, claiming all couples go through rough patches. One message asked if I was really going to throw away a good man over nothing. I replied to one of them with a single question. "Did he tell you he was at a book club?" 2 hours of silence passed before the answer came. That's not the point. Except it was. It was the entire point. Lucas hadn't only lied to me, he had lied to everyone. By day 5, the sweetness evaporated completely. He cornered me in the hallway with swollen eyes but a hardened jaw. "If you leave," he said, "I'll have nowhere to go. I can't afford this place alone. You're ruining my life." "You have 30 days to find somewhere," I replied. "I'm not leaving you on the street." "You're heartless," he said. "I'm realistic." Then he demanded I pay the entire lease break fee since I was the one ending things. He argued I owed him the furniture because I make more money. He insisted I give him 3 months, not 30 days. No was my answer to all of it. His final attempt to regain control was a threat. "If you walk out, I'll tell everyone you were emotionally abusive." I stared at him, something inside me finally going silent and cold. "Tell anyone anything you want, Lucas. But make sure you explain exactly what I did that was abusive, trusting you for 3 years." He didn't have a response. I thought the worst was over until I walked into the apartment the next day and found a woman from the bar sitting on my couch, drinking one of my sparkling waters, scrolling through Netflix like she owned the place. Lucas stood beside her, arms crossed. "Sandra," he said, "she's here to help me process everything. You're being dramatic." The woman smirked. "Yeah, we can all talk like adults." I pulled out my phone, dialed 911, and turned the screen toward them. Before the call even connected, she grabbed her purse and bolted. Lucas yelled something about me overreacting, but she was already gone. I walked past him without a word, grabbed the suitcase I'd hidden under the bed, and finished packing the last of what mattered. The next morning, I paid the entire lease break fee myself. Not because he deserved a break, but because I refused to stay tied to someone who treated me like an inconvenience. By the afternoon, with Harper's help, I moved out completely while Lucas was still at work. I left behind the furniture, bed, couch, every relic of us. I wanted nothing that echoed him when I stepped into my new life. Before I drove away, I canceled every utility and streaming service under my name. That evening, my phone lit up. "Why would you do this? I'm sitting in the dark. It's freezing. You're cruel." I didn't reply. Lucas's mother called next, screeching about how I had no right to cut off services. I calmly told her her son could set up his own accounts just like any adult, then hung up as she hurled insults into the void. That night, I blocked them both. For the first time in months, I didn't listen for a key turning in the lock at 2 a.m. I slept. Word spreads fast when someone tries to rewrite history to hide their own guilt. I learned this within 48 hours of moving out. I was unpacking clothes in my new, quiet, blessedly empty apartment when my phone buzzed with a message from a mutual friend, someone who'd always been neutral, someone who rarely involved himself in drama. "Sandra, is it true you cheated on Lucas?" I stared at the screen, my heart dropping only for a second before anger rose instead. Of course. Of course Lucas wouldn't sit with the shame of what he'd done. Of course he'd build a new lie to cover the old one. 8 months of deception had trained him well. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I pulled up the screenshots I'd sent to my email. The group chat, the photos, the late-night plans, the fire emojis Lucas with women pressed against him in dim club lighting. I sent them to my friend without a word. His reply came 3 minutes later. "Jesus Christ, I'm sorry. I had no idea." He wasn't the last to apologize. Within a day, 3 more friends messaged me with variations of shock and regret. Someone finally admitted that Lucas had been telling people I was the problem, that I was jealous, controlling, insecure, emotionally unstable. Classic projection dressed up as concern. But the screenshots cut through his story like a blade through paper. The truth was undeniable, time-stamped, documented, and far more compelling than his improvisational victim act. One friend even wrote, "He told us you didn't support his career, but it looks like he was out partying every week pretending it was work." I didn't bother correcting or clarifying more than necessary. The truth was doing the work for me, spreading quietly from one friend to the next. No campaigns, no malice, just reality finally catching up to a lie that had gone too far. But the fallout didn't end with Lucas. One of the women in his book club had a boyfriend, someone she'd been posting couple photos with for months. According to mutual acquaintances, he had no idea she'd spent every Tuesday night drinking and dancing with Lucas's secret group. He thought she was at a yoga class. When the screenshots reached him, their relationship imploded almost immediately. Curiously, that woman stopped defending Lucas the same day. The entire friend group, his little nightlife universe, began dissolving like sugar in hot water. Without secrecy, without lies, their bond had nothing to cling to. I should have felt satisfaction. I didn't. What I felt was quiet relief. Like the final piece of a puzzle had clicked into place. Deceit creates friendships, but truth destroys them. A few days later, Lucas's mother texted me again. Not calling this time, a text. Shorter, hesitant. "I didn't know the full story. I shouldn't have judged you. I'm sorry." It wasn't a full apology, not really, but it was something. I stared at the message for a long time before typing, "Thank you." Nothing more, nothing less. I didn't need her forgiveness or understanding, but acknowledging her shift felt like closing a door gently instead of slamming it. Meanwhile, Lucas stayed quiet. He didn't try to message me again directly, at least not for the first week. Maybe he sensed the damage control attempts were pointless. Maybe he finally realized how flimsy his version of events was once people saw the truth laid bare in a series of photos and messages he never expected me to find. Or maybe he simply turned his attention to finding a new narrative to survive on. People like him don't reflect. They reframe. They rewrite. What surprised me most was how peaceful my life became in his absence. My new apartment wasn't fancy. It was smaller, quieter, with thinner walls and older flooring, but it was mine. Entirely mine. No lies seeped into the carpet. No 2 a.m. alarms of keys turning in the lock. No dread hidden behind bathroom doors, or faint perfume of cigarette smoke on clothes that weren't supposed to smell like that. I woke up each morning and breathed easier. I cooked breakfast in silence. I lit candles at night. I played music without worrying someone would come home drunk and start a fight disguised as a misunderstanding. My phone buzzed less and less. The chaos settled. And slowly, so slowly, the emotional fog began to part. But just as I started regaining myself, one final twist arrived like a message carried by a gust of wind through a half-open window. One of Lucas's closest friends, the same one who had sent me that first offensive message, reached out again, this time with nothing but 3 words. "You were right." No explanation, no elaboration. And somehow that felt better than any apology. It meant Lucas's fabricated version of me, the overly jealous villain in his story, had finally stopped holding its shape. People saw him clearly now. Sometimes consequences whisper. Sometimes they roar. Lucas's were doing both, quietly dismantling his social circle while echoing through the same rooms he used to stumble into at 3 a.m. And I wasn't there to witness any of it. The truth was burning everything down on its own without my help. My new apartment was smaller, older, and a little uneven in the way the floorboards creaked when I walked across them. But every creak sounded like freedom. I woke up the first morning after moving in and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Silence. Not the tense kind that used to hang between Lucas and me after each Tuesday night lie. Not the brittle quiet that filled our apartment when he pretended nothing was wrong. This silence was gentle, soft, a full-bodied exhale I didn't know I'd been holding. I made coffee in my new kitchen, leaning against the counter as steam curled into the morning air. No dread, no suspicion. No waiting for the sound of keys at 2 a.m. No imagining him pressed against strangers in dark corners while calling it networking. Just me. Just the start of something new. As the days passed, the weight on my chest loosened. I unpacked slowly, choosing where each item belonged, not based on compromise or shared space, but based on what made me feel settled. It felt almost ceremonial. Every drawer I filled was a quiet reclaiming of myself. My rent was cheaper than my portion at the old place, a small silver lining. In the wreckage, work became easier to focus on. My friends, now fully informed of the truth, checked in regularly, but not with pity, with genuine support. They apologized for believing Lucas and I forgave them easily. Lies are persuasive when they come from someone desperately trying to protect the version of themselves they want others to see. Even Lucas's mother had softened. After her brief apology, she didn't call again. That, too, was a gift. Meanwhile, mutual acquaintances continued sending me tidbits of what was happening in Lucas's world. His friend group had fractured completely. The woman who'd been texting him fire emojis had broken up with her boyfriend. The group's Tuesday nights, the secret social life he valued more than honesty, had collapsed without secrecy to hold it together. And Lucas. He didn't reach out. Not at first. Maybe shame finally caught up to him. Maybe he ran out of narratives to hide behind. Maybe he thought silence would punish me. I don't know. And I wasn't interested in speculating. I was living quietly, peacefully, mending myself one slow day at a time. It was almost 3 weeks after I moved out when his name finally appeared on my phone again. A message preview, no greeting, no remorse. Just, "You've ruined everything." Not "I'm sorry," not "I understand now," not "I'm trying to be better." Just blame aimed at me. Like a final arrow shot from someone who still didn't understand he was the one who'd lit the match. I deleted the message without opening the full text. It felt good. Not triumphant, not vengeful, just clean. A small, definitive gesture that closed a chapter I'd been dragging behind me like a broken limb. Later that night, I sat on my balcony with a blanket around my shoulders, the city lights blinking softly in the distance. I thought about the relationship, about the 3 years I invested, the nights I stayed up, worried the mornings I made coffee for both of us, the dreams I once held so tightly. I thought about the ring I'd almost bought, the home I'd built in my mind, the life I planned to share with someone who never truly shared himself with me. Did I regret it? Not exactly. I didn't regret loving the version of Lucas I thought existed. I didn't regret believing in him before I had a reason not to. But I regretted that version of him wasn't real. That the person I trusted was a story he told me, polished and sweet, hiding the parts he didn't want me to see. 8 months of lies is painful. A lifetime of them would have destroyed me. The truth didn't just set me free, it saved years of my future I hadn't even lived yet. The night air felt colder, gentler. I exhaled, watching my breath fog for a moment before dissolving into the dark. There was something beautiful in that, how things vanish, how they drift, how they make room for something new. I wasn't healed yet. Healing never comes all at once, but I was on my way. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was ready for it. My name is Christina Grizzle. I'm 32 years old, and the night my marriage fell apart didn't start with a fight or even a warning. It started with fluorescent hospital lights burning behind my eyelids and the taste of metal in my mouth, a familiar exhaustion after a 12-hour ER shift that felt like it had vacuumed my soul hollow. 2 codes: a stabbing victim, a terrified little girl who swallowed a Lego and couldn't breathe. I'd cleaned blood off my shoes twice. I hadn't eaten since sunrise. Every part of my body begged for nothing more than a shower, a warm bed, and silence. Instead, I walked into the most carefully staged betrayal I'd ever seen. It was a little past 11 p.m. when I opened the bedroom door. The lights were dim, soft, warm, the way Liam, my husband of 5 years, usually set them when he knew I had a brutal shift. For a second, that made my heart swell. A tiny breath of relief escaped my chest. Then I saw him. Liam, 29, sitting up in our bed, with another man under the blankets beside him. My brain rejected the image at first, as if it had been dropped into the wrong movie. My scrubs were still damp, my stethoscope hung around my neck, and my vision tunneled. Christina, you're tired, you're hallucinating, you just need sleep. That's what my mind tried to tell me. But then Liam giggled. Actually giggled. Oh my God, babe, you're home early, he said, biting his lip like this was some kind of romantic surprise. My eyes moved slowly, his bare chest. The stranger lying under my comforter, the phone clutched in Liam's hand. Recording. The stranger didn't move, didn't speak, just looked as uncomfortable as a kid forced into a school play they never auditioned for. And then I saw at the ring camera he'd angled toward the door. My breath clicked in my throat. This wasn't infidelity, it was content. Surprise, Liam chirped, lifting his phone like he was unboxing a gift. It's a prank for TikTok. Aren't you gonna freak out? Come on, give me something dramatic. He thought my devastation would be entertainment. My heart didn't even break. It froze, like someone had poured liquid nitrogen into my veins. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't throw anything. In fact, I didn't feel anything at all. I just stared at him, the man I'd cooked for, supported through the lowest points of his life, held through panic attacks planned a future with, the man who knew how much betrayal terrified me, the man who used my heart as set dressing. And I walked out. No words, no scene, no meltdown, just silence. Behind me, Liam laughed. Then he hesitated. Then he called out Christina. Babe, it's a joke. It's supposed to be funny. Wait, where are you going? But I was already moving down the hall, grabbing my wallet and keys, heading for the door, as if my body knew something my heart hadn't processed yet. By the time Liam realized I wasn't coming back, I was already in my car, engine running. I drove straight to the airport, parked, walked inside, booked the first flight out, one way, to stay with my older sister across the country. I didn't answer his calls, didn't open his texts, didn't lift my eyes from the airport tiles until I was boarding. When I landed 6 hours later, my phone had 126 missed calls and over 230 messages, starting with, "Lol, I can't believe you actually left." Then shifting to, "This isn't funny anymore. Where are you? You're being dramatic. Come home right now." I replied with only 4 words, "Talk to my lawyer." And then I blocked his number. Later that morning, as I sat at my sister's kitchen table, wrapped in one of her oversized sweaters, she wordlessly slid her phone toward me. Her eyebrows were tight, her jaw locked. He posted it, Christina. Liam had uploaded this video anyway. Cheating prank on wife goes wrong, 3.2 million views. People laughing at the moment my marriage died. I hadn't left because he cheated. I left because he wanted my heartbreak to go viral. And he had no idea what he'd started. When the plane touched down and the cabin lights flicked on, reality hit me harder than turbulence ever could. I had left my entire life behind with nothing but a purse, a phone, and the clothes I'd been wearing during a 12-hour shift. My sister Laura didn't ask questions when she picked me up. She just pulled me into a hug that lasted longer than either of us expected. I didn't cry, not yet. It was like my emotions were frozen somewhere deep in my throat, refusing to thaw. By mid-morning, I was sitting in a leather chair inside the office of Marilyn Cortez, a family attorney who came highly recommended by one of Laura's co-workers. Marilyn had the demeanor of someone who had seen every kind of human disaster and could categorize them neatly into legal folders. I told her everything. Walking into the bedroom, the stranger. The camera pointed at the door, my silent exit, the airport, the video. When she watched Liam's TikTok cheating prank on Wife Goes Wrong, her face did something subtle but unmistakable. It hardened. "This is not a prank," she said, pausing the video. "This is a calculated setup designed to humiliate you publicly. He filmed you without permission. He introduced an outside party into your marital home to trigger an emotional response. And he posted it for profit." I blinked. "Profit?" "Yes." She turned her monitor toward me, showing analytics estimated creator fund payouts and traffic spikes. At 3 million views, he's made money. Not a fortune, but enough to be legally relevant. I didn't know whether to laugh or throw up. Marilyn leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Christina, what your husband did can be defined as emotional abuse. Courts don't look kindly on this kind of behavior. If you choose to separate, this video strengthens your case significantly." "Separate," the word echoed. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again and again. I had muted notifications, but they still vibrated relentlessly against the table. When I turned it over, there were hundreds of new messages, not just from Liam, but from random strangers. People who now felt entitled to judge me. "Lol, she can't take a joke. Imagine ruining your marriage over a prank. He deserves better." My chest tightened, but Marilyn just nodded unfazed. "This is the double-edged sword of virality," she said. "But it also means he cannot control the narrative anymore. Not legally." Laura slipped her hand over mine. "You're not going back there, Chris. Not after this." Before I could answer, my phone rang with an unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something told me to answer. A quiet male voice spoke. "Christina, this is, the guy from your bed." My stomach dropped. He introduced himself as Evan said he was a friend of Liam's ex-girlfriend. That alone made my pulse spike. Liam had brought someone connected to the woman he used to date into our bedroom. Evan sounded mortified. "I swear I didn't know he was going to post it. I thought it was a dumb scare prank. I didn't realize he'd film you. Or that he'd, turn it into this." His voice shook. He apologized. Deeply, repeatedly. I ended the call when my hands began trembling too much to hold the phone. When we finally returned to my house with a police escort, as Marilyn recommended, I expected tension. I didn't expect destruction. Our living room looked ransacked. Blankets thrown everywhere. Drawers pulled out. My clothes scattered like debris after a storm. The TV missing. Some of my personal jewelry gone. The officer documenting everything let out a low whistle. "Ma'am," he said, "I've seen messy marriage fights, but pranking your spouse like this, that's a new one." It wasn't a prank to me. It was the moment a man I loved chose views over my dignity. And as I stood in the ruins of my own home, surrounded by proof of his tantrum, I felt something thaw inside me, not tears. Resolve. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't overreacting. He threw away our marriage the second he decided betrayal made good content. And now consequences were coming, whether he was ready or not. The online wildfire didn't die down, it mutated. Within days, Liam had gone from posting teary apology clips to releasing full-blown storytime videos, painting himself as the abandoned, misunderstood husband whose wife ran away because she couldn't take a harmless joke. And people believed him, or at least enough did. I saw the videos because my sister showed me, not because I was looking. In one, he sat on our sofa, my sofa, the one he took after trashing the house pretending to choke back tears. "I just wanted to make her laugh." He sniffed into the camera. "But she's always been so sensitive. She's been emotionally distant for months. I think my prank finally pushed her to admit she didn't love me anymore." Emotionally distant. I had spent 5 years picking up the pieces of his panic attacks, paying bills during the months he refused to work, threading encouragement into him like stitches every time he spiraled. But now I was a distant, cold wife who abandoned him for internet sympathy. Marilyn's response was immediate. "We're filing a cease and desist for defamation," she said, tapping her pen against a stack of printed screenshots. His narrative shift is predictable. The moment abusers lose control, they rewrite history. I didn't feel angry. I felt tired. Like all my emotions had been wrung out and laid on a clothesline to dry somewhere far away. But then it escalated. A woman approached me at the grocery store, eyes narrowed, voice sharp. "You should be ashamed," she hissed. "Tormenting your husband like that. I didn't even know how to respond. I just walked away, leaving a basket filled with fruit on the floor. The next morning, Marilyn called. You need to sit down for this. Liam had drained our shared household account, almost $5,000, while I was at my sister's. Money meant for rent, utilities, groceries. Money I had contributed more than half of. We immediately filed for an emergency motion. The judge ordered him to return half within 48 hours or face contempt charges. He complied, but not before his mother left my mom 12 voicemails, calling me a gold-digging parasite destroying her baby's life. My mom finally responded with, "Ma'am, if you contact me again, I'll have you blocked for harassment." Still, it didn't stop. 2 days later, during my first shift back at the hospital, security approached me halfway through triage. "Christina, your husband is in the waiting room." My breath stopped. "He's crying, demanding to see you. He's refusing to leave." The world blurred for a moment as anger, real cold, sharp anger, finally cracked through my calm exterior. Security escorted him out. He tried to grab my arm when I passed. I jerked away without a word. That night he posted about it. I went to my wife's work to apologize, and they treated me like a criminal. She won't even hear me out. I just want my marriage back. He left out the part where he screamed at 2 nurses, knocked over a chair, and had to be physically guided outside. I filed for a restraining order the next morning. The harassment didn't stop, just shifted tactics. His attorney reached out, announcing Liam's new demands: $15,000 for emotional damages, partial ownership of my retirement account, the living room furniture, a written statement saying the separation was mutual and amicable. Marilyn laughed, actually laughed. "He's delusional," she said. "We're rejecting everything except a standard equal split of shared assets. He gets nothing more." And yet the storm kept building. Later that week, I received a message that made my blood run cold. It was from Liam's ex-girlfriend, the woman whose friend had been in my bed. She admitted she helped him stage the prank. "He said it would be harmless and that you'd laugh it off," she wrote. "I had no idea it would become this big or that he'd unravel like this. I'm sorry." Unravel was an understatement. Liam wasn't losing control, he was setting fire to every boundary I'd ever set. And standing in my sister's guest room, holding my phone in a shaking hand, I finally understood something. This wasn't about a prank. This wasn't about TikTok. This wasn't about views. This was about control. Liam had lost the ability to script my reactions. So now he was trying to script the world's. But the one thing he never expected was that I would stop playing my role entirely. The next step wouldn't be online, wouldn't be emotional. It would be legal and final. The courthouse smelled faintly of old paper coffee and the kind of tension that comes from lives being dissected in legal language. I sat beside Marilyn in the front row, hands folded tightly, pulse steady but heavy like a drumbeat echoing up through my ribs. Across the aisle, Liam looked smaller than I remembered him. Hair unbrushed, tie crooked, leg bouncing uncontrollably. His mother sat beside him, arms crossed, glaring at me like I had personally orchestrated the downfall of civilization. He didn't look heartbroken, he looked cornered. When the judge entered, everything went still. Marilyn stood first, confident and poised. She presented the case in clean, devastating strokes: the TikTok video, the destroyed property, the drained account, the harassment at my workplace, the public defamation, the ongoing manipulation. Then she pressed play. The viral prank video echoed through the courtroom like a ghost. My quiet shocked the stranger in my bed, Liam's giggle, his voice urging me to give him something dramatic. The judge's eyebrows rose, once, slowly. When the video ended, the room felt colder. "Mrs. Grizzle," the judge asked, turning to me, "is this the moment you chose to leave your home?" I nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." "Understandable," the judge murmured. Then it was Liam's turn. His attorney, an eager man with a too-tight suit and a rehearsed sympathetic smile, began with a plea that sounded almost theatrical. "Your Honor, my client made a mistake, a foolish, ill-timed joke, but he never intended harm. He has suffered immensely since his wife abandoned him without warning." Marilyn stood before he finished. "Objection. She did not abandon him. She removed herself from an emotionally unsafe environment." "Sustained," the judge said sharply. "Counselor, choose your words carefully." Liam's lawyer swallowed hard and recalibrated. "They tried painting me as too sensitive, emotionally reactive, cold, and unwilling to communicate. A narrative Liam had repeated online thousands of times." Then Marilyn rose again. "Let's discuss intent," she said, walking toward the witness stand where Liam sat fidgeting. "Mr. Grizzle, why did you angle a ring camera toward your bedroom door?" His throat bobbed. "To record the prank." "And why did you choose a prank involving fake infidelity?" A long pause. "Because it gets views." Views, she repeated, eyes narrowing. Not laughter, not connection. Views. It was supposed to be funny, he mumbled. And was it your intention to trigger your wife into believing she'd walked in on you cheating? No, I mean, maybe a little, but not like... And did you monetize the video? His mother squeezed his arm. He hesitated. Yes, he said finally. But it wasn't a lot. $3,400, Marilyn recited from the documents, earned from humiliating your wife. The judge's gaze sharpened. Marilyn continued, voice low and surgical. Did you at any point receive your wife's consent to film her reaction in your marital bedroom and post it publicly? No, he admitted. Did you ask her permission? No. Did you inform her in any capacity before uploading the video? No. Did you destroy or remove her belongings after she left the home? He froze. I was upset. That is not an answer, Marilyn pressed. Liam's voice cracked. Yes. And did you show up at her workplace causing a disruption during her shift? It wasn't like, yes or no, Mr. Grizzle. Yeah, yes. The judge lifted a hand. That is sufficient. The courtroom went silent except for the faint hum of the overhead lights. After a short recess, the judge returned with the ruling. In the matter of Christina Grizzle and Liam Grizzle, he began voice. Steady, the court finds that Mr. Grizzle engaged in a pattern of behavior that constitutes emotional abuse, harassment, and violation of marital privacy. A single tear rolled down Liam's cheek. His mother gasped loudly. Accordingly, the judge continued. A 6-month protective order is granted. Assets shall be divided equally, with each party retaining what they brought into the marriage. Mr. Grizzle's financial claims are denied. Mrs. Grizzle is not responsible for his emotional damages, student loans, or personal debts. Liam's lawyer lowered his head. Additionally, the judge said Mr. Grizzle is ordered to remove all online content involving Mrs. Grizzle within 48 hours or face further legal consequences. Half of Mrs. Grizzle's legal fees shall be paid by Mr. Grizzle due to unnecessary escalation. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. But something unknotted in my chest, a tension I'd been holding for weeks, released like a snapped wire. As the judge dismissed the case, Liam's mother shot to her feet. You ruined him, she hissed over the railing. He could have been your whole world. My father, who had been silent the entire hearing, finally turned to her. He was never supposed to be her whole world, he said calmly. He was supposed to be her partner. There's a difference. The bailiff stepped between them as we gathered our things. Outside the courthouse, sunlight hit my face for the first time that day. Warm, steady, real. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like reclaiming my breath after being underwater too long. And for the first time since the night everything snapped, I felt like myself again. Sunlight streamed across the small living room of my new apartment, a quiet one-bedroom space with pale walls, soft blankets, and absolutely nothing that wasn't chosen by me. No Ring cameras hidden on shelves. No forced couple aesthetic. No audience. Just peace. I didn't realize how heavy silence had become until it finally felt safe. After the court ruling, I spent a week at my parents' place, letting the shock settle into something steadier. My mom cooked too much food. My dad insisted on fixing things that weren't broken. They didn't say it aloud, but I could feel it relief that their daughter had finally escaped something they'd sensed long before I did. The protective order brought a strange mix of comfort and grief. I never imagined I'd need legal paperwork just to feel safe from the man I once trusted with everything. But healing isn't tidy. It doesn't ask if you're ready. My first night in the new apartment, I didn't sleep much. I walked through every room in slow circles, touching surfaces, opening drawers, breathing in the quiet like it was medicine. A week later, I went back to therapy. My therapist listened, nodded, and finally said the words no one else had found. You didn't just lose a marriage. You lost the version of him you believed in. It felt like truth cracking open. But somewhere inside me, there was still something unbroken. I started going on morning walks again, making real dinners, laughing with coworkers. For the first time in months, the hollow feeling in my chest stopped echoing. And then unexpectedly, there was the coffee date. A friend from work introduced us someone gentle, soft-spoken, the kind of man who didn't assume attention was owed to him. We talked for an hour. Nothing romantic, nothing heavy, just two people sharing a table. When he walked me to my car, he didn't press for anything, just smiled and said, I hope the next chapter treats you kindly. I didn't realize how badly I needed someone to treat me like a human instead of a storyline. That night I found out Liam knew. A message reached me through a mutual friend. Already moved on. Guess I never mattered. I took a breath to steady the familiar spark of guilt, then let it extinguish. I told the friend to reply with the truth. She mattered until you valued views more than your marriage. There was no response. But Liam's silence didn't last long. 2 days after the divorce became final, he posted a new TikTok. Not showing his face this time, blurred voice, slightly altered, but unmistakably him. Talking about narcissistic ex-wives and how strong men get punished for being vulnerable and how one harmless joke cost him everything. He didn't mention me by name, but he didn't need to. His followers connected the dots instantly. Comments exploded, some supportive, most calling him delusional. I didn't watch the whole thing. I didn't have to. Instead, I sent the link to Marilyn. Within an hour, she issued a formal notice: remove the video or face a contempt hearing for violating the judge's order. It disappeared in minutes. That was the last I heard of Liam. People say closure comes from answers. But mine came from absence, the quiet after the storm. The realization that not every wound needs a final conversation to heal. A few weeks later, I stopped by my usual coffee shop before work. As I waited for my order, a young woman approached me hesitantly. "Sorry," she said, "but are you the woman from that TikTok?" My stomach tightened, but I nodded. She offered a sad smile. "Good for you. What he did was awful." I let out a slow breath. "He's not my husband anymore." "Good," she said softly. "You deserve better." And the strange thing was, it didn't sting. It didn't feel humiliating. It felt true. I walked out of the cafe into the morning light, the air crisp and full of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. My therapist once told me, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply walk away. I didn't understand it then. But now, standing in the warmth of a quiet morning, keys in my hand, future unfolding in front of me, like a path I didn't know I'd been searching for, I finally did. Liam valued followers more than he valued me, but I chose myself. And in the end, that choice saved my life from becoming someone else's content. The world keeps spinning. My heart keeps steady time. And peace finally is louder than the chaos ever was.